There's something about Zelda that will always hold a special place in my heart. Wind Waker's music has a lot to do with the fondness I have with the series, particularly its lighthearted, silly, and adventurous tunes are nothing short of masterful. And as of recently, I acquired myself a MIDI module called the SC-88 Pro, or Sound Canvas, that was frequently used in the process of Wind Waker and many of the other games I hope to cover in the future. So while I was trying to get better at using the Sound Canvas, it occurred to me that maybe I can make my own Wind Waker inspired track. So to do this, I'm going to break down 3 Wind Waker tracks and then use what I learned to compose my own original piece. My plan is to break down each tune one at a time, give it an analysis, and then see if we can use something out of that piece to put it into our own. So without further ado, let's begin. Starting off with our first track, Inside a House, we're introduced immediately to the kind of playful tone Wind Waker sets up for us as we're originally exploring the houses of Outset Island. The instruments used are a strong reason for its fun and cozy vibe, as we'll see in the other tracks. With pizzicato strings playing a bass line for us, we can clearly see the harmony that's implied. Starting with a G minor chord as our 1, it keeps descending from the 1 chord to flat 7, to flat 6, to finally end at our 5 chord to give it that dominant function that brings us back to our tonic 1 chord. This chord progression is extremely popular and more commonly used to invoke a more serious emotion. But because of the use of plucked strings along with our staccato clarinet and bassoon, it makes this otherwise dire progression feel pretty lighthearted. This concept out of all of them I'm actually the most excited to play around with on my track. This leads us into the melody. Our clarinet is actually playing this melody in thirds, which would be impossible unless we had 2 clarinets or 1 MIDI keyboard. The melody is fairly simple in terms of its notes, but what really gives it its interest is its use on the upbeats rather than our downbeats. I took this as an opportunity to recreate the song using the Sound Canvas. Listen to the melody as is normally written in the upbeats. Now listen to the melody one more time as I change it from the upbeats to the downbeats. Neither one is wrong, but its placement on the upbeats is what really helps give it its energetic tone. Finally, after briefly mentioning that the bassoon is playing staccato quarter notes on our root notes, we get a counter melody from the flute to spice things up and break what could be too much monotony in the track. This counter melody varies our original melody just enough to add some nuance, but not too much where we might be fighting for first place in the melody competition. With all these parts put together, we get a really nice, upbeat, yet relaxing piece. So to start off actually making my track, I'm going to apply 2 concepts out of the first song. The first being a very clear bass line with our pizzicato strings. This was my first attempt at the bass line, but I didn't really like it. Too much going on, I think. It just wasn't exactly what I was looking for, and that's okay. Sometimes you don't get it the first time. I needed something that was a bit less involved. But after messing around a little longer, I came up with a second idea that I liked much, much more. And now we have something to start with. The strings are great because it's going to give us a lot of rhythmic and harmonic information for us to build with into our other pieces of the song. And after messing around for longer than I'm willing to admit to, it's time for us to move on to the melody. Again, I came up with a couple different ideas at first, and then finally one started to stick, and that was the one I chose to show. Now I'm going to add the concept of using harmonic thirds similar to how it was used in Inside a House. The use of harmony can add a really nice touch depending on how we use it. We're not adding it in every note, but a little bit goes a long way. And now we have our most important pieces to build onto. We have our harmony and our melody, which is going to let us layer on other instruments and concepts as we move on. Getting into our next piece today, we have Beatles Shop. This track is catchy for numerous reasons, but let's start with the basics first. Our rhythm section is filled with unique percussive instruments, including the bongo, maracas, güiro, and the almighty cowbell. This rhythm section drives a significant part of what's to come of our bass line and melody. With a bass line being covered in a repetitive and groovy rhythm, using root notes to start, it shows our chord progression nicely for us. We start in the key that's always been there for us in our hard and trying times. Our first section, known as the A section, uses a classic 1 to 2 progression for most of it. The rest of the track uses the 1, 4, and 5 chords, which to some people may seem like a boring progression, but I think it's more of a testament to how it's not just about the chords, but rather what you do with them. Now moving on, melody consists of a marimba playing notes that are harmonized in either 3rd, 4th, or 6th intervals. Each one has its own unique sound and is used nicely in both the sections. With both parts of percussion and the marimba being played, we get a beautiful shop theme. And with that analysis out of the way, we go back to making our own track. Going back to making my piece, I'm going to take advantage of some of the more concepts that I liked. The most important part to Beatles Shop to me was its use of percussion instruments. A solid percussion part can really carry a tune, and that's what I tried doing here. It's a great start, and I might refine it a little more as I'm going through. But before I get too involved in the details on that, I actually want to go back to our melody. But more specifically, I want to create a calendar melody using the marimbas similar to Beatles Shop, but in more of a call and response function. Here you can actually see me messing around with the idea before I finalize my thoughts. I had this idea of using the marimbas while I was making the original melody. The phrases have enough time in between them to actually write its own little response between each portion. And after doing a little bit more of adjustments, this is what I came up with. We've gotten a lot of important pieces down on our track, and it's getting really close to being done. But details make or break a piece, and I have a few more ideas up my sleeve. This will be our final analysis before going on to finishing up our track. Ah, the sound of swashbuckling and tomfoolery. I can't tell you how many times I've heard this song. Just when you thought that you got the controls of this game, this song came on to remind you how foolish you were. But putting aside my grievances, I actually really love this piece. Inside a Pirate Ship starts off like our first track, using pizzicato strings in the bass line. Section A is fairly simple in its harmony, using the key of F and simply playing the root note while alternating to its fifth to have that classic bass line feel. The claves and maracas in this tune are all we need for percussion. The claves alternate on beat 4 and the and of 4, while the maracas are playing on every and of the beat. Any more percussion would take away from the simplicity of this piece, and I think that's actually what makes it pretty good. 2 brass instruments play repeating phrases of C followed by either an E flat or C flat. The E flat is a flat 7 in the key, while the C flat is a flat 5. These notes would normally indicate a minor key, but because of our melody we can actually see that it's a major with a blues scale. A major blues scale includes the flat third scale degree as well as the major third to get a nice half-step resolution. It's what makes the blues so familiar to our ears. The melody does this by outlining the notes of our F major chord, with the exception of starting with the flat third into the major third. This use of the minor third into the major third is a clear use of blues vocabulary. It immediately makes you aware that it's not taking itself very seriously and is trying to be as goofy as possible. Finally, the melody gets carried by a flute that continues from our A section to the B section until letting it all start back to the beginning. This use of pizzicato strings, percussion, brass, and flute gets us a silly song with Nico as I curse the game's jump mechanics. With this being the last of the three, I felt the last part I wanted to include in my track was the use of brass instruments. The most important part to me in the Pirate Ship song was the melody and its use of blues notes, but I don't want to overtake too much of what I have now, so I'm going to add in my brass parts and show my thinking behind it. Okay, so after working on the brass parts, I actually ended up finishing my whole B section right here. And a lot of what I did was a little tedious, so I didn't think it would make too much sense to record and show it all. But now that we've actually put all these individual parts together, we can finally hear the finished version of my piece. So I hope you enjoy. Finally, this work is going to be under the public domain under the Creative Commons 0, so if you want to use it, modify it, distribute it, use it for your work, anything, it's free for you to do so. And that file is under the description. Thank you for watching this video. It's my first big project that I've ever done for YouTube. It's very new to me. It was a lot of work, but it was extremely rewarding. If you want any more of this, please let me know. I'd love to hear from you.